Alright everyone, welcome to Theater 14C, Gangsters and Detectives. We're going to begin the class with gangster films, and this is your first lecture. The origins of the American movie gangster. Where did the gangster come from? Well, if we look at some widespread social events, the first one we have is Prohibition from 1919 to 1933, also known as the Volstead Act. And this was the banning of the purchase and sale of alcohol in America, and this led to a big black market. And who stepped in to do the bootlegging? Gangsters. We also have the Great Depression from 1929 to 1939, so there's a worldwide economic crash. There were no jobs, people lost their homes, people were upset. Well, they robbed a few banks and turned to bootlegging. And if you look at the dates, there's an overlap from 1929 to 1933. And that meant that not only were you broke and were you about to lose your house, but you also couldn't get a drink. So this is going to make some people kind of angry, picking up machine guns, etc. We also have World War II right on the heels of the Great Depression. Arguably, it actually helped the economy. So from 1939 to 1945, all of the American resources were essentially going to the war effort. Sometimes these resources got diverted by gangsters, and so we had some black markets set up to actually get normal citizens things they wanted, like hamburgers and soap and things like that. Also, there was a great deal of paranoia because there was a war going on, and also the Cold War, which set in immediately afterwards, and these were contributing factors to film noir, which we'll talk about in the class a little bit later. We also had the real gangsters, who were definitely products of Prohibition and the Great Depression. People like John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson, Al Capone, Bonnie and Clyde. All these people were bootleggers or stick-up artists or bank robbers, and definitely products of the time. And there wasn't any television at this time, so people got most of their entertainment from reading newspapers and listening to the radio, and these people were featured heavily. Then we have arguably the first gangster film, The Musketeers of Pig Alley from 1912. There are some clips up, so I think you folks should check them out if you get a chance to. We also have, for those of you that are into theater, if you look back at Shakespeare and some of his characters, people like Macbeth, Julius Caesar, Richard III, these are the original gangsters, and they're a really good place to start if you ever want to create your own gangster. So what is a gangster? Gangster can be many things. A person who attempts to achieve his goals by criminal means, we'll definitely see this. A member of a gang or organized crime organization, takes many members to actually get a gang together. A career criminal who either can't tell right from wrong or doesn't care, also known as a sociopath. A greedy robber baron who cannot satisfy his desire for wealth and power. This is usually the guy at the top, and sometimes he might be a white-collar criminal. Also, the cold-blooded killer who isn't good at much else, your standard hitman, or sometimes this will factor in as your revenge gangster. So your film for this week is Scarface from 1932. It was directed by Howard Hawks and produced by Howard Hughes. And this is part of the first American gangster film cycle, the first of the talkies that dealt with gangsters, and one of the more important films from that cycle. This story is fairly typical of the early gangster films, and when I say that, there's this kind of a standard story. The gangster starts at the bottom, he works his way to the top by being more brutal than everybody else, and he doesn't quite make it to the top, and ends up dying in flames. And this is a story that people can relate to. Now, this film also explores the strange psychological and strange sexual nature of the gangster as well. So it could be latent homosexuality, like in the movie Little Caesar, misogyny, like in The Public Enemy, Oedipal complexes, like we see next week in White Heat, and incestuous relationships, like we see in this film today. And also impotence. This can be a common problem with the gangster. So audiences responded to this film the same way they did to the real-life criminal stories, those real gangsters they were reading about in the papers. You know, they hated the gangsters, but they loved watching what they did. And we tend to do that when we watch movies, so nothing new here. Well, good luck, folks.